Hello everybody, welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we are going to expand on the concept used in the last video, where we essentially used the squirrel mop to create large masses of foliage, then dried it off, put in our branches, trunks, etc., dried it off, and then continued that process. So this will be a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more exploratory. The last one was just kind of a proof of concept. And yeah, let's get ready to have some fun. So we have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge and Aqua in front of me. It is 140 pound cold press and 100% cotton. And it is nice and saturated. Going to pause the video for a second, set up the palette, and we'll talk about it. Okay, so I laid out some different colors on the palette. This time I added a little bit of cerulean blue. Here I have some quinacridone gold, which is from Daniel Smith. This is not the original pure quin gold. This is, let's see, I think it's PO 48 and PY 150. The original quin gold isn't available anymore. Somebody was asking about that, and I've never tried the original. I think they had discontinued that pigment prior to me starting to paint. I also put out some raw umber and a little bit of lavender. Is it lavender? Yeah. Yeah, so we have all that out, just some different things to play around with. So, before we get started, I do want to say it's about 9 in the morning, and I inadvertently highly caffeinated myself. I had got up and thought, you know what, I'll go out and skateboard a little bit, get a little bit of exercise before I do some cooking. We had bought a ham that we're going to put in the oven and all that. And so I was, drinking some caffeine, and subsequently got very energized. But we have a cold front coming through, and you'll probably wind up hearing some thunder in the background. All right, this is some cerulean blue. This is, I believe, the Cotman brand. Cerulean at this level is just a mixture of, I believe it's going to be your phthalo blue and probably something else. So it's not the original pure cerulean. Put that in. We'll grab a little bit of raw sienna. I just want to do something kind of colorful and different today. Let's grab a little bit of ultramarine blue. In fact, the other day I was riding around getting some exercise, and it was late evening and there was kind of storm clouds, but the cerulean blue on the horizon was just so beautiful that I thought the next time I paint, I have to add some cerulean blue in there. Also, good horizon blue is your Prussian blue, if you want to use something like that. So we have kind of just a background mix in, and I'm going to start experimenting with those squirrel mop washes. So first, what I need to do is dry everything off. I'm going to pause the video real quick. Okay, and we are back. Now, as you can see in this video, through the drying process, I did get some hard edges, and that was because of the copious amount of water. Usually I try to avoid those, but with this one I figured, why not let it happen, and then, let's see what we can do with it. See if we can mask it, if it's something that we really need to worry about. So I'm taking the squirrel mop, and this is lavender right here. This is what brand? I believe it is, yeah, Van Gogh brand. It, pigment-wise, PV29, PV15, and PW6. So I'm going to mop in some lavender. And then let's grab some ultramarine with our light red oxide for that distant purple. Want a little bit more watery. Here's an even watery mix. We'll have that there. Okay, so I kind of just mopped in willy-nilly. I don't have a compositional plan yet. Now would be a good time for us to come up with one. So let's see. I'm going to wind up progressively coming forward with mopping in tree colors. I could feed wet and wet and get different tonal and color varieties within this, as an example right there. Grab a more solid tree line in this region. Probably a secondary tree line like we did in the other one. And foreground trees. Maybe we'll even allow a path to take place. So I'm not too worried about composition. I'm just more focused on this technique and seeing what's happening with it. So I'm going to do another pause for a dry off, and then I'm going to mop a different color on top of this. All right, that dried off a lot faster. Let's grab some raw umber. Now, I think I mentioned in previous videos that I really don't use raw umber in watercolor. James Fletcher Watson, who is, deceased, no longer with us, he has a lot of books out, and at one point, I think later on in his books, he wound up adding in raw umber as a variety instead of just having raw sienna. So it might be something y'all would be interested in adding to your palette. Let's grab it. A little bit lighter wash. Let it layer, see how it interacts with the background. Also have that Quin Gold. Somebody was saying in comments on YouTube that they were looking for a good yellow gold. So that's kind of a good showing of it, even though it's not on top of pure white right there. In fact, let's find a spot with pure white to demonstrate that. That's a thick glob of it. Let's grab some burnt sienna mixed into it. Some light red oxide. Let's see what it's, lemon yellow. Let's mop that. This would be the shadow region for these guys. They mix ultramarine blue with our burnt sienna. You can then feed in some lower foliage. Once this all dries, yeah, Hammy. Burnt raw umber, sorry. You can feed it in as some darks in here. What's up, Hammy? Yeah. What you looking for? Let's let shadows come a little bit forward. I had talked about doing a path right in here, so I'll just do this darker region and let the path be kind of created through negative painting where I'm not painting in that spot. And I'll darken up that base of the foreground tree, kind of like that last painting. We'll use the the hake for texture. Let me do a pause and dry off. Now, the frequent dry offs are pretty beneficial. It gives me time to look at it and, during the blow dry process and see what I think needs to be done. And I had two thoughts while this drying was taking place. First and foremost is that I wanted a watered down blue, ultramarine, burnt sienna. It's super watered down so that the trunks and branches recede into the painting. I don't want them to push too far forward. Try not to repeat the same shape side by side like I just did right there. Have a variety in it. And also what went through my mind is that we can wholeheartedly go even heavier with the pigment and have another closer layer to us. So that is what we'll do. All right, so I don't really focus too much on how I was going to lay those in, mainly because, like I said, why not take a thicker wash, and here's my Quin Gold, and lay that thicker wash on top and have a closer object. So we'll see how this layers. We'll grab raw sienna, burnt sienna, and lay that in. Burnt sienna seems to have an opaque aspect to it, so I figure that opacity will help as well. I may dig through and grab some ochre. That would be quite opaque. Light red oxide. Probably like a cad yellow instead of lemon yellow if I was going to go in that route. This is for closer trees. So I want some of the previous trees to still hold their strength. Here's some raw sienna. I have a big old glob of it. These trees will originate in this region. So just kind of keeping in mind my linear perspective that they're going to drop and progressively get larger in general as objects get closer. I am grabbing a little bit of ultramarine in here. I want to be careful because if you follow this channel, you know that I love moody paintings and that I love when things get tonally dark, but like I said, I want something more colorful for you all and showcase how these different colors overlay. Y'all can probably hear the rain in the background in this video. It's really coming down right now. Light red oxide. Part of me always feels like light red oxide is close to sienna, the burnt sienna. However, mixed with ultramarine, you'll get a dark with the burnt sienna. But if you mix it with, yeah, you get a dark with the burnt sienna. But if you mix it with the light red oxide, you get that purple. So it's interesting that two colors that are very similar will have that ability. If I have a yellow ochre available, I'm going to put that out. So let me pause for a second. All right, we're in luck. I had yellow ochre readily available. So yellow ochre is more opaque, and people tend to have raw sienna on their palette as opposed to yellow ochre. But we'll lay that in spots, just so you can see how it interacts, because that was the Quin Gold underneath. I did even put out some Naples Yellow Red, which somebody had asked about in a live video once. They wanted me to demo it, so I figured let's throw a little bit in there. And then I think once you have a nice composition, something that you're working with, this one is still kind of just experimental, not matching it to any scene or anything like that. It's a very easy, viable method for foliage. So I'm going to mix a dark. Whenever I say that, that's going to be ultramarine and burnt sienna. You can feed it in here. Now I am curious, with the heavy pigment that we just laid down, how much it would influence the brush strokes of a tree trunks. So let's see. Very Thanksgiving-y colors. So this is just continuing that mix of ultramarine and sienna. just having fun, just doing random lines. Okay, let me pause this. All right, I now have the number 4 rigger. The reason I have this one out is that it just helps me lay in more paint than the number 1. This is going to be a closer tree. You can use the hake for this. In fact, grab said hake. You can come up along it. I'll add a secondary tree. I just need a bigger mixture of paint to pull from. Oop, splatter and paint around. Is this too wet? This hake is not working with me right now. And the reason I'm doing this is it's going to give me just a little bit more depth to the painting, a little bit more excitement, and I personally feel that when I then put in foliage into these guys, using the normal method that I use, where I'll stipple it in using the hake all crazy, it adds a nice contrast where we have soft blended foliage in the background, and now up front we can get more variety. We can grab the raw sienna straight from the tube. We could even grab, well, let's grab some burnt umber. Let's add another large tree right in here. Once again, this is just in the interest of depth within the scene. I think I had said in the beginning, I really didn't have much of a composition in mind, and I had a little bit of an idea of a little path and whatnot, and that this is more experimenting with colors. At this point, it's now experimenting with a different texture on top of the previous texture, as well as attempting to create an interesting composition. Let me grab, this is burnt sienna. And once again, we're just going for that contrast over that background. If you'd like, you can scrape into these trees for even more contrast, more texture. Now, when stippling in foliage, you do want to be careful, mainly because as you stipple in more and more, that area gets wetter and wetter, and then it starts blending, and you start losing that that crispness. So I'm just doing little scrapes, just adding a little excitement. I'm going to pause this for a moment to do a dry off. Now, when I was doing that, I had thought we could also use our paper towel technique in those phases back there to lift and add texture to those trees, so we could still get those large mops in while also having some texture if you wanted to take that further. So that might be something we'll experiment with if continue to use this method. As you all know, I'm a big fan of experimenting with paints and whatnot, and composition and texture. However, sometimes it throws you off your game. Like, if I was to go paint in my normal style right now, I feel like it would take me a painting or two to get back into the groove. Some of the painters that I talk to, sometimes we avoid looking at other artists because it kind of throws us for a loop, and will influence our approach, and then we seem to get in our heads and have a hard time. So let's grab that small rigger. You can also splatter on top if you want to. This is the small rigger adding to these guys. I think I'll put a couple walking, and we'll call it something like Thanksgiving Stroll. One thing that I don't want to point out, but I'm gonna anyway, this looks like a man from the side with an angry face. So I will never be able to unsee that. So I'm going to take a light wash and put that back there, and hopefully that'll help diffuse that image for me. Getting a more concentrated mix now. Put couples walking together. I don't practice figures as much as I should. I don't know if Ian has made any videos yet, but he is the master of adding figures into his paintings. My approach is just something I had seen in a Frankie Clark video where he had said kind of just draw a carrot shape, and that'll help. Take the rigger sideways. Add a little texture to this path. Okay, some Payne's Gray. And just kind of marking around, making some movement. So let's stand up, take a look. I'm going to do one last dry off. We'll sign it. All right. So if you follow along with my tutorials, you are more than welcome to sign your name on it. And I encourage you, if somebody offers to buy it, to sell that painting. I want you guys to be successful, and I want you to be able to afford art supplies. On that note, if you ever want to support this channel, which you totally don't have to, there's no, no pressure. I have a link down below for my Etsy. I also have a link down below for my Patreon. I have 2 very cheap tiers, and I would love for you to consider supporting me on there. I have like a $2 tier and a $5 tier. And, that goes towards art supplies, and I do have some unique content up there. Beyond that, I'd love for you to consider liking and subscribing to this channel. That helps out immensely. And if you ever have any questions or comments, please let me know. If there's anything ever that you want me to try to tackle, or anything I'm not being clear about, or if you have any suggestions on things I could do better or be clear about, let me know. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all soon.